My biology teacher said he would show us to a class, so assuming that goes through, hello class. Because nothing brings me more unfiltered, unadulterated joy than talking one's ear off, and because it's relevant to the childbirth lessons we're currently doing, I'm holding you hostage for a few minutes to talk about a specific birth defect, one that I and roughly 1 in every 700 people have, a cleft lip and or palate. Yay. For the sake of keeping this somewhat organized, I'll split this video into 3 sections. First, we'll look at the science behind it because, this is educational, after all. How it happens, what it is, that sort of thing. Secondly, we'll go into some comorbid medical and social issues that often come along with it. That sentence took me way too many times to read out loud because I'm reading off of a script. I just would like you to know. And then finally, just for the sake of keeping this somewhat interesting, we'll go into a little bit of media representation. So, without further ado...
If you don't want me to call you lip, then don't have a weird lip. Can't you get surgery for that?
What is a cleft lip or palate? That's probably the best place to start. While the two often go hand in hand, they can also occur as just one, and they are separate, so I'll give a description for both of them. The short answer is that a cleft lip is when there is a split in one or both of the ridges that connects the upper lip and the nose. If it's just one, that's called a unilateral cleft lip, and if it's both, then it's bilateral. A cleft palate is a split down the roof of the mouth. Specifically, the split is in the hard palate, which is like the front part of the roof of your mouth, if that makes sense. I was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate, so I basically won the genetic lottery on that one. Go me. I also don't have a soft palate, which is the back part of the roof of your mouth, that the swingy thing, what's it called? The swingy thing in the back of your throat. You know what I'm talking about? That's connected to it. I don't have that. I don't have that thing. So because of that, there's just a direct passage to my nasal cavity. This is why many people with clefts tend to have more nasally vocal qualities. I don't think mine is too severe on that front, but I've also had a few people tell me I sound like a boy version of Peridot, so you'll be the judge of that.
You're my last chance. I've got no flask robinoids. I've got no foot. I've got no response from Yellow Diamond!
As for the fancy science explanation, everyone technically has a cleft when they are in the womb in the sense that those ridges aren't connected. The ridges don't actually fuse and connect until later on in pregnancy. This also applies to the bones that connect the roof of the mouth. However, for a number of different reasons, some people's just don't ever connect during pregnancy, leaving them with a cleft. Personally, the best explanation we can come up for why I have it is that my biological father, not my dad who I live with, had a gene for it since his sister has a kid who also has it, but there can be a number of other causes for it, not just genetics, although that is one of the bigger ones. A cleft lip, and especially cleft palate, can also cause a lot of issues with things like eating and breathing, as well as a number of other comorbid issues, which, again, we'll get into later. So ideally, it is repaired when somebody is only a few months old. I have had 9 operations relating to it, though I only remember a few of them because most repairs happen before permanent memory really starts. Unfortunately, not everyone is able to afford these surgeries, so they can go their whole life without ever getting it fixed, which isn't great, but there are charities out there such as Smile Train, Operation Smile. You look up Cleft Charity, you'll find a bunch of them, and they help to combat that financial issue, which is cool. We love to see it. So now that we are all on the same page as to what we're dealing with here, let's talk about some comorbid, which, if you're wondering, is just a fancy word for related or coinciding because I'm extra. Comorbid issues, both medical and social, that often come along with having such a condition.
You see that guy over there who looks like he went down on a lawnmower?
First, I'll just get the medical bits out of the way. Lots of people with clefts have janky teeth due to the split in the roof of the mouth kind of throwing everything out of place. I had to wear braces when I was younger, and there's still a noticeable gap between my right canine tooth and one of my front teeth. On a similar note, a lot of us have underbites. I physically cannot set the bottom row of my teeth behind my top row of teeth, and I will need surgery for that in a few years, so that's fun. Okay, so here I have a subreddit for the condition, and literally one of the top posts is about this jaw surgery. There's a lot of them about the surgery in this thing. Another one about that. There's so many There's so many about this one surgery, and every single time I see one of them, I just dread it more and more. It's gonna suck. It's not gonna be good. Everywhere. Half of them are just this. Ear problems are also very common due to poor development of the bones and muscles in the ear, which is related to a cleft palate, apparently. I didn't know that until I looked up it and learned. Internet cool. Ear infections are also a frequently seen instance of this. I had many of those as a child. I even had an operation to get my tubes in my ears because the ear infections were such an issue for me. Like, I was constantly missing school when I was little because I was at the doctor half the time. It can also cause minor or major hearing loss over time. The final, most notable, and common side effect of a cleft, as far as like medical physical stuff, is speech problems. This affects pretty much everybody with a cleft, whether they have a cleft lip, palate, or both. This kid in this clip I'm gonna put here explains it a lot better than I can.
When my palate and teeth are make it hard for me to form certain sounds.
Even after years of speech therapy, I still cannot form certain sounds correctly. Most notably, my TH sounds often come out more like a G or a K sound. There are also a few things that most people with clefts just cannot do. If you have a cleft lip that's not microform, which is when it's so minor that it doesn't really affect the shape after it's repaired, then brass instruments are just not. They just aren't. Believe me, I tried. I played trumpet when I was in middle school. That was not... It just wasn't. It just wasn't. I'm not good at this. If you enjoy singing or theater or anything, there's a lot of specific vocal warm-ups that you can't do. They're all minor issues, admittedly, for those who get it repaired, obviously, but they're still there nonetheless. I've also noticed in photos and stuff that facial hair forms a bit strangely due to scarring and whatnot. That was actually a point of concern when doing my stage makeup for Beauty and the Beast, but we figured it out. As for social issues, the most obvious one is bullying. This one is pretty unanimous. It's incredibly rare for somebody with a cleft, even a microform one, to not get bullied or at least receive a dirty remark once. Usually a lot more than once, but you know. There's also a lot of questions that come with it, which is understandable and I don't mind, but it can become grating after a while. Miniature story time. When I was little, there was this kid who simply refused to believe that I was born with it. He thought that something just had to have happened, so I told him I got attacked by a shark, and he started crying. Also, just in general, weird looks and stuff like that are common. This applies to any sort of birth defect or deformity or just literally anything that isn't considered normal, but you know. Also, upon finding that previously shown subreddit, and also there's a Discord connected to it, upon joining those, I learned that apparently a lot of people with it were actually not glad that there was a pandemic, obviously, but they enjoyed having a mask because it covers that entire part of your face, so there wasn't like as many questions being asked. I've rambled about this part for long enough, so we'll go on to the fun part of the video, which is media representation.
I'm flipping the script.
Wait, you the kid with the lip?
As stated earlier, clefts affect roughly 1 in every 700 people, making it the most common facial deformity, so it's no surprise that there are at least some famous people who have had it. A few of the more notable ones include Joaquin Phoenix, most known for his role as Joker in the 2019 Joker movie, Tom Burke, who is a British actor known for his role as Athos in the BBC show The Musketeers, Cheech Marin of the popular comedy duo Cheech and Chong, Thomas Malthus, actually, though his cleft wasn't depicted in the portrait of him, it is reported that he did have it, and King Tut, among his many other medical issues, was believed to have a cleft palate and maybe also a cleft lip. As for representation of characters with it, obviously any live-action character played by an actor who has it is going to have it just by association because it's a physical thing, but specific characters written with it are harder to come by, and unfortunately most examples are bad, they're not good. Scars are a very common design choice for villain characters. especially facial scars. This much is understandable, as any sort of visible injury or scarring can be a good indicator that a character has been through a lot, which can be a motive for them being evil, or just having some sort of deeper meaning to their character, and the face is usually the most visible part of a character, so it's a good place to put that. This doesn't just apply to villains either. It is more common in villains, but there's plenty of examples of good guys in media who have some sort of scarring. There's nothing wrong with this on its own, however, the issue comes when you start associating real-world birth defects with evilness. That paints a bad light on anyone who has it. An example of this sort of thing would be Brandon James from the MTV Scream series. There was a TV series based off of the Scream movies, if you didn't know. This character had Proteus syndrome, more commonly known as Elephant Man syndrome. While an attempt is made to use it to paint a more sympathetic light on his character, it still comes across as a bit insensitive to real people with it, when his most defining characteristic is that he killed a bunch of people. As for Clefts, most of the examples that you can generally find are either villains or just being included for shock value. Examples of this would be Butch Cavendish from the 2013 Disney movie The Lone Ranger, whose cleft is used as a physical metaphor for how broken and twisted he is. That's not great. Hannibal villain Francis Dollarhide, I probably butchered that name, who is a serial killer with a hyper focus on biting his victims. Oh, okay. Inger, I'm butchering all of these names, I'm so sorry, from the 1920 novel Growth of the Soil, whose deformity drives her insane to the point where she, offs her own child. A brief image of a child with the affliction is in the opening credits sequence for the horror film Malignant. And also, the Penguin from the new Batman movie he has a cleft lip among the rest of his facial scars, which is just not necessary at a certain point, because he has so many other facial scars, they did not need to include it, but they did, so that's a choice. The second Harry Potter book even had to change a line from its initial release, because the character Lockhart brings up a witch with a condition in a very off-putting manner. He refers to it as a hair lip, which is an outdated and widely considered offensive term for a cleft or somebody with a cleft. So thanks for that, J.K. Rowling. Needless to say, none of these are particularly flattering depictions of the condition. The one I do want to acknowledge real quick, however, is the character of Eli, or Hawk, from Cobra Kai. The actor doesn't actually have a cleft, so this was a very deliberate choice on the part of the writers, and they actually handled it pretty well. He's not exactly the most morally upstanding person, but that also applies to everyone in the show, so it doesn't make him stick out as the hyper-aggressive guy with a facial deformity. We see pretty accurate, if slightly exaggerated for drama factors, examples of him being bullied for it, even by his karate instructor, but he slowly gets more confident, if more mean, over the course of the first season. They also did a pretty good job of explaining his appearance without getting too technical about anything.
Can't you get surgery for that?
I was born with a cleft lip. This is the scar from the surgery.
You mean it was worse before that?
And while it is an important part of his character, it's not his defining quality, and he has a whole story arc beyond just that, which is refreshing to see. Far from a perfect depiction, but leagues better than most other examples that come to mind. Also, the actor worked with Smile Train, which I just find adorable. Good soup, I don't know.
Are we done? Well, I mean, I can't just show them one email. I want to show that I was, like, a good friend. That I was trying to help him, you know?
Oh my god. Anyways, I hope this served as a nice little crash course in a thing that you might not have known about, or at least not very extensively. Be kind to people, even if you don't understand them. Insert other moral lessons in here, I don't know. Check out Smile Train if you have some money to spare, because it is a very good cause. Also, little tip, Will France is a magician with a cleft who makes really entertaining videos that they baffle my mind. I seriously cannot wrap my head around the things that this man does. I would check him out if that interests you at all, because he makes very good stuff. I don't know how to sign off this video in a way that makes sense, so I'm just gonna Among Us shoes.